we're thinking creatures, manusya, meaning we're mammals that think, and we have retentive memory, and this is natural for us. Thinking is our nature. And so it's learning how to, like in meditation, we're learning how to use thought rather than just be a victim of our thinking habits, because thinking becomes habitual, and that's what you're finding difficult, where the habitual tendency to proliferate, to think. And that's where it's important to get to really appreciate the significance of the here and now, and to really begin to notice when there's no thought. Like we tend to, thinking proliferates. It starts with one thought, and then it goes on and on and on. And it depends on grammar, so we learn, say the English language, we learn how to speak in grammatical formations. It becomes habitual. And with meditation, with mindfulness practice, you're opening to, you're not trying to stop thinking as an act of aversion or just controlling the mind, but understanding the nature of the mind itself. And so just to know that thinking like you're thinking right now is like this. And to, like Luang Por Chah, because I was an obsessed thinker, when I went to stay with him, I was just, couldn't stop thinking. I couldn't even do Anapanasati, because my mind was just off thinking all the time. So I couldn't sustain any concentration on sensation, like on the breathing from the nostril. So he advised me to think Bhutto, the mantra, the Buddha's name. And he said, if you're going to think, just think this one word. So I started using this Bhutto mantra, and but it can, one can just be thinking Bhutto like mechanically, but that's not. It's to make it bright and clear. So I would think, quite intentionally, before I even thought Bhutto, I would be aware that there wasn't a thought. Just before when I'm intentionally, purposely thinking, I'm going to think Bhutto, and then there's a space there where there's no thought, and you're aware of that space. Notice that, so that because it's natural, but we never bother to pay any attention to it because it doesn't seem like anything, and one thought always seems to connect to something else. But with this, you're really interested in the gaps between words, where there's just consciousness and awareness, but no thought, and to note that, and begin to, and then pu, if you use, it's two-syllable, pu, and then there's another space, and then to. Then when you finish to, there's another. There's no thought. And you're interested in no thought rather than in the actual content of what you're thinking. Try that. And that way you begin to connect mindfulness, because there's mindfulness, there's consciousness working together, and then wisdom, panya. Because you're seeing it from a Buddhist perspective rather than from personal attitudes or identities. Because it's the Buddha's name, it means being mindful, it means being aware here and now. So it has a significance that as a mantra in its meaning, but it's not to attach to the word itself, but use the word to be aware of just pure consciousness and with wisdom. An instructor, so then you're developing awareness of the way things are rather than trying to think about what did the Buddha say about the way things are and then quote the Buddha. You're actually realizing it yourself. But anything, you notice, like when you ask a question, I would ask myself, who is it that thinks? Because there's thinking, and then you assume there's something thinking that you think is yourself. Say, who is thinking? And then there's a gap. When you ask yourself a question, there's a space before you start trying to answer the question. With these kind of questions, they're rhetorical. You're not interested in the answer, but in the getting to be more confident in awareness around when there's no thought and there's consciousness, awareness, and wisdom. It's like, where are my car keys right now? And then you're interested. I don't have any car keys, but I don't have a car. But it's a rhetorical question. But it stops the thinking mind, because there's hesitation. And we tend, if you're really looking for your car keys, where did I put my car keys? Then you're immediately trying to think, was it over there or in there? But when you're making it just an investigation of consciousness, that you're not really interested in the answers, but in the non-answers. And don't see thinking as something as an obstacle, because but learning to use thinking, how to develop right thinking. This is what the Buddha's teaching is about. I used to, when I first had insight, I was a samanera before I met Luang Por Chah, and I had the insight to stop thinking. So I tried to force myself to stop thinking. You can't sustain that. There's no way you can sustain just willful stopping of thought. And so it had to be where Luang Por Chah was teaching the way things are, rather than idealizing, states that you attain, and then you try to grasp those kind of attainments. He was always pointing to Paccuppanna Dhamma, here and now.
There's a question concerning the making of merit and sharing merit. When one dedicates merit, how does the person one dedicated to, whether they're alive or passed away already, how do they receive it? The person giving it, how do they share the merit?
This sharing the merit it's a really beautiful thing to do, because when somebody dies, we're left with a memory of them. Say if they were your mother, father, or husband, wife, children, grandparents, some people you love, or people, friends, and what's left after they're cremated or buried is, what do? Put flowers once a year on a grave, or like in Thailand, for example, they share the merit. They do something good. They perform some kind of skillful action like dana, offering food to the sangha, or doing something good for the society. And using and sharing the merit with departed relatives, parents. And in that way, you're honoring the memory that you have. And this is, but using the memory of departed loved ones as a catalyst for good action in the society. And living in the UK for so many years, because in Europe, for example, somebody dies, there's nothing, and you bury them, the most you can do is put flowers on their grave once a year or something like that. But to me, what I saw in Thailand was much more skillful, because you're actually the memory, say, of my mother, when I do good action and offer the merit in loving memory of the mother. It's using my mother as a catalyst for good action. That's kind of joyful feeling, because it isn't just so. You feel grief when somebody dies, but you also can transmute grief into joy. Not about the happy that they're dead, but honoring that memory is a way to honor the memory of parents or grandparents or departed loved ones, friends. That psychologically I find very, very skillful custom. And in England I teach this to the British. They liked it too, because it offers it's a beautiful thing to be doing. And people are basically, we have generous hearts, and we need opportunities to express that. And when loved ones die, what are we going to do? Well, we still have the memory of them. That will last you most of your life. So that memory then, rather than just thinking, oh, my mother died 25 years ago and I miss her, you're not just talking about that, but you're actually using the memory for good action. And societies need that. It helps improve the psychology of the society and of the individuals when there's ways of expressing love and honor and respect for people who are loved ones who've died away.
The next question concerns meditation. Someone is saying that earlier in their practice they had quite a lot of piti, joy arising in the meditation, whereas now they're doing more investigative meditation and there's less piti arising. Is that okay?
Well, like piti is we like that, it's a very beautiful feeling. And when we have it in meditation, it's one of the important developments of jhana, is piti, but of concentration. But also we can have a desire to have it again, and then we can't get it. So and piti arises when you're not trying to seek it. I'm meditating in order to get piti, and then you won't get it that way. But it arises through, I find, like when we went on a pilgrimage to India, just going to the Buddhist holy places like Bodh Gaya or Kusinara, and I reflect on the Buddha, and that I feel this pity, this kind of rapture and tears. It's not grief or sorrow. It's a joyful feeling. Just reflecting on the Buddha, or like Kusinara on my 80th year, it was last year. I went and spent about a week in there where the Buddha passed away when he was 80 years old. And Kusinara is a very quiet place, very nice pilgrimage spot. And experience a lot of that, a kind of pity, just feeling gratitude to the Buddha. But I wasn't trying to get pity, it wasn't like an intentional seeking of it. It just happens naturally when the conditions are there for that to happen. And usually it's like katanyu gataveti, gratitude, contentment. Feel a lot of pity when I think of Luang Por Chah. I feel a lot of gratitude because he was such an excellent and compassionate teacher. But I don't think of him just to feel pity. Things like that, they come from the heart level, and so the problem with meditation is we're expecting something. Maybe we've had a really marvelous meditation where we've experienced a lot of joy and pity, and then we want to have it again. So we sit down to meditate, hoping that we remember this wonderful meditation we had the other day, and we sit there and wait for it to happen, but nothing happens except you get a sore back. And I started meditation in 1966. I went to live in Thailand, and I had worked in Malaysia in the state of Sabah as a Peace Corps English language teacher, so I could get a position easily at a university, at Thammasat University in Bangkok, teaching English. Then right next to Thammasat University is Wat Mahathat, one of the main and very old temples in Bangkok, and they had Tanjau Kun Chodok, who was high-ranking Thai monk who established the temple, the Wat Buddha Pratip temple in London, and he was famous for Vipassana meditation. So I went to him, and he set me up in a place where I could meditate after I finished teaching at the university across the street. And the first day, nothing much happened, but I went back the second day, and I was sitting there, in this place that they assigned me, and somebody slammed a door. I heard the door slam, and I went into this state of utter stillness, pure, unadulterated, silent stillness, and I thought, wow, this is great, this is wonderful, and I'd only been practicing 2 days. The next day I went, hoping to have that experience, and nobody slammed the door. And all I had was a sore back. So, but this is what you learn. You learn to let go of memories. And the desire to have, like when you remember that, the other day I had this marvelous experience, then you're coming from desire, from a memory that makes desire arise, you want to have it again, where the original experience, there was no desire. I wasn't expecting anything. I didn't know what to expect. So, I mean, you think slamming a door would not be helpful at all, but it was the very thing that sent me into this state of stillness. But I didn't understand it, you know. There was no, I hadn't developed wisdom, but it created this memory, and the next day I went back and did the breathing on the rising and falling of the abdomen, and just like they told me to do, and nothing much happened. And later I realized, you know, how investigating the second noble truth, where the desire to get states you remember is suffering.
There's a question about relationship to food. Someone says they're not particularly attached to delicious food, but to healthy food, thinking that it'll make them live longer so they can keep practicing and realize the Dhamma. Can you say anything about that relationship to food, healthy food?
Food is a necessity of life. And the Buddha allowed us to eat food. So, and without it, we wouldn't last very long. The thing is, you know, that, I mean, like in Vinaya, we keep these two Danga rules, these ascetic rules, and one of them is 1 meal a day, something like that. So you're limiting. And when, you know, so when I was a lay person, I was brought up with, you must have 3 square meals a day. Never could really wonder what a square meal was. But this was the philosophy of my mother. And I remember if I missed a meal, she'd look horrified, you know, like I was going to get sick or die. So if, you know, I happened to miss a meal, my mother, oh, you're going to get weak and sickly. That's how I was brought up, with that kind of social attitude about food. And then there was always biscuits, cookies, things to eat beside the 3 square meals. And so this is, you know, from what kind of a middle-class family in America, you take this for granted. This is how you operate. This is normal behavior. And then in Wapapong, Thailand, 1 meal a day, and it was very strict. Even if Ajahn, they were so strict in those days that if you drank a cup of Ovaltine before the meal, then you couldn't eat the meal, because the Ovaltine would count as a meal. 1 meal a day and 1 sitting. And then Ajahn Chah would take all these curries and different things that people bring and mix them all up in a big basin. And so you had fish and chicken and pork all mixed up together, and then they'd ladle it out into your alms bowl, and it was quite disgusting, actually. And it certainly didn't create, you know, at first I found it very difficult. I couldn't eat it, actually. But then I remember, you know, that one has to eat, and Luang Por Chah used to do things like that to get us to look at the kind of kilesas, the kind of mental states we create around food. And I began to learn how to eat the food. It was, very different than say Bangkok Thai food. And it was sticky rice and a lot of these little green chilies that are terrific. Pricky new. You get one of those in your mouth and you feel you're on fire. And I wasn't used to spicy food either. So, but over the time I learned to eat this, and even began to like a lot of the food in northeast Thailand. But more and more, when you contemplate food, and you're rather seeing it in terms of not personal likes and preferences, you become kind of weary of food. And you're not interested in it anymore. But you still eat because it is a necessity. But it's good training if you use it as for mindfulness, because food brings up a lot of emotions. And we very seldom had sweets in those days, like cake or anything. So, and then the food was distributed. They assigned certain monks to distribute the food. So you go on alms round, you go on bindabat in the villages, and then you come back, and all the food you had would be put in a central area, and then trying to distribute it evenly from the senior monks down to the Anagarika, the Pokaw. And I noticed that, as you get more senior, you get better choices. and if you got a cake, you couldn't help but, when it was an option, you took it. And then we'd go on alms round sometimes in the provincial town of Waran, the nearest town. The lay people would come and take us in buses, and we'd walk along the high street with Luang Por Chah, and the shop owners and people in Waran would offer some delicious cake, but you usually get a full bowl very quickly, and you have to dump it into a basket with a layman coming along, because in order to receive more food. And I see this incredible defilement arising about trying to keep this cake. So you find some most childish, juvenile behavior in yourself just by watching. And I think Luang Por Chah is the only one that can get away with that, mixing the food. Because after that, nobody dared do that. At that time, we were there, all of us were absolutely, there were about 22 bhikkhus the first year, and we were all absolutely devoted to Ajahn Chah. So whatever he said, nobody really questioned it. But food is like living in England for so long. There's never any problem around food. At first, before I went there, I was concerned I didn't know, I'm not English, and didn't really know anyone there, and we keep this strict rules, so we can't have money and buy food. What am I going to do? But during the 34 years I lived there was never any shortage. That was just too much rich food. I gained a lot of weight there.
There's a question about how to deal with pests in the house, wasp nests, pests. Ants, wasps and stuff in the house. If you put repellent, that don't necessarily leave, so how to deal with it?
You spread metta to them. That's it.
Someone is asking on how to offer comfort and solace to a close friend or relative who is losing their eyesight.
Losing their sight. Yes, well, we all, having disabilities and all that, I think people are very much aware of learning to, it helps, to see old people and blind people, things like that, as opportunities to care, to take an interest, to listen to them, because you get to feel isolated and just getting old. Like myself, you don't have that. Your mind doesn't get old, so it's just your body. And sometimes you don't realize you are old till your body won't cooperate anymore with your mind. So it's a learning process how to live with. Like I have hearing deficit and I have macular degeneration, and I'm beginning to tremble when I take a spoon of soup. The hand trembles, and I have poor balance. This is just like old age is teaching me. If you see it on the ego level, from the personal sense of self-worth, that remember your ego was formed when you were young. And so that doesn't likes to think of oneself as fit and good vision and good hearing and so forth, because the ego is still thinks in terms of that one is young, or that we want to be seen as young rather than some old man or old woman. And we live in a society that despises old age, so it's always intimidating old people. They're trying to look as young as they can imagine. They can deceive themselves. Because the modern societies are very materialistic, and youth is held up as the role model for success and physical attraction. So this is the society we live in. Is like this. But also, when Prince Siddhartha left the palace, when as the legend goes, he was brought up in this very privileged environment, his father king, and with all the best opportunities for youthful pleasures and enjoyment and pleasant sensory experiences. And the king and his father didn't want, he was told by a sage that he would either be a world emperor or a Buddha. And fathers don't want their sons to be Buddhas. Fathers want us to be world emperors, So the king tried to keep away all the signs that would make the young prince think of Buddhahood. And so, old people were forbidden in the palace, and sick people, and death was never mentioned, and samanas or monks or hermits were not allowed in, to keep the whole atmosphere of youthful vigor and beauty and privilege. Well, this is this is in the scriptures, but also the prince began to wonder as he grew older, what's beyond all this, and he goes out and he sees an old man walking with a walking stick, all bent over, and he wonders what that is. He says, that's old age, and that's quite shock. And so there's an old man, another person that is sick and in a terrible state of illness, and another one, a corpse, a dead human corpse, and then the fourth is a samana, or a mendicant meditating under a tree. So these are called the four devadutas. So these are in a society that is very materialistic and worships youth and material success and vigor and fitness, then these devadutas I see myself as very much a devaduta these days. Living in Europe for so long, you realize the value of wearing a robe is that it's not the easiest garment to live with. You look at trousers and shirts, and they're easy to keep on, but these things fall off, but they keep the form, the devaduta image, visual, and it has an effect. Say in England, wherever you go, the people sense that you're not just that you're some kind of religious person, or you live a disciplined life in some way, spiritually moving towards a spiritual goal. And people respect that in a way that often surprises me. Losing the eyesight would be, losing because we're very much a visual society. We like to see things. And so that it can be seen as something bad, or see it in a negative way, or change attitude. It's a challenge to learn how to function, how to be aware when you can't see, when you no longer can see. Disabilities are not obstructions to enlightenment, like blindness, deafness, or physical limitations. And these are not the obstructions. These are not obstacles. In fact, people I know in England have suddenly developed an interest in Buddhist meditation due to being diagnosed with cancer and things in their life going all wrong, and they suddenly awaken to Dhamma. The problems with the things that obstruct Dhamma are human conceit and fear and desire without any kind of blind ignorance. But it's good someone who is going blind, encourage them towards mindfulness, meditation, towards seeing it and observing their mental states, the fear of being a blind person, or wearing anxiety that must come from losing one's vision. But these are all can be seen as steps on the path rather than as conditions ruining one's life. It's all about learning to use what you have, the way you are. You know, it's not, that's not the problem. The kind of, whether you're male or female or young or old or you're fit or sickly, these are not obstructions to enlightenment. The real obstructions is ignorance of Dhamma, human conceit, and the self-view, and just blind habit patterns without any reflection or understanding. So like this weekend, it's opening up this atmosphere of investigation and encouragement, so that you learn from the way you are. You know, none of us are given the perfect set of conditions. You know, you have to be really fit and young and have all your senses working properly in order to get anywhere. Well, on the worldly level, maybe that, you know, to be a Olympic athlete or something. But that's very limited self-view, where with blindness it's preparing you for a much deeper, profound understanding of life and Dhamma than you would just having perfect vision till you're 100.
Enough for now. So we say thank you to Luang Por for some more teachings. We'll give him a break now and give you all a chance to change your posture for the next 3 hours, sitting or walking meditation as you wish. And then at 4 o'clock to meet in front of the hall for the group walking meditation, which the monks will lead. So please feel free to carry on your own practice for the next period.